Everyone, and welcome to week 2. This week we're going to look at how to do backgrounds ready for you to print on top of. So we're going to be looking at bubble wrap, rubber bands on the roller and painting with acrylic paint for you then to use the stamps and the inks to print on top of. So now's a good time to get the kettle on, make yourself a brew and let's get started. Today we're going to be looking at how to create a background onto your white paper. And I'm going to start off by showing you how to do that with bubble wrap. It's a really fun way to create some pattern onto it. I like to use one of these sponge brushes, as they're called, but you can just as easily use a normal paintbrush. And taking a bit of this yellow paint that I've put on here, it's craft paint from, I probably got this from Hobbycraft. I'm just going to drag the paint over the bubble wrap. It's worth putting a little bit of paper underneath this because it can get a little bit messy. Now that's yellow on that side, maybe we do a bit of a double colour and I pop a little bit of orange into that one. I'm just going to pop it straight on top of the yellow. Will it come out? Yep. Mix that in with that and pull that on the other side. And by going over the middle of the bubble wrap where it meets the yellow, what happens is you create quite a nice sort of blended effect then of the yellow going into the orange. Take that paper away for the moment and then taking a piece of art paper or card, whatever you've got, just turn the bubble wrap over and gently press down. Try not to drag, otherwise you'll end up with a smudged look. And what we're trying to create here are painted circles. So just keep pressing down like this. There we go. Lift that up. And you can see that's given rather a lovely effect there. Now I didn't put too much paint on there, so that will dry reasonably quickly. But just as a comparison, I'd like to show you the same technique. I'm going to put that to one side for the minute. I'd like to show you the same technique using the ink pads. So just bring that paper back again. I'm taking another piece of bubble wrap. Just get rid of this paint on here. For a minute. There we go. And I'm going to take one of the yellow ink pads that I've got and just pretend that it's one of your little stamps that you normally stamp on. The technique's exactly the same. Just stamp some colour onto it. Now the challenge with this of getting the colours to blend, I don't know if you can see here, but I've already got orange on the end of there, which I don't want to mess up this yellow. So you just have to be a little bit more careful when you're getting into the middle so that you don't end up with yellow on your orange or orange on your yellow ink pads. So you get the general idea here. So this will have a bit more of a definitive line, simply because I don't want to spoil the ink pad itself. And that's okay. That's okay with this one. We've just got a more definitive line and that's fine. Exactly the same. Get your paper that you're going to be using. Turn it over. And press again. Now this ink will last on this bubble wrap for quite some time. It doesn't dry in the same way that paint does. So you can do more than one of these if you want to. And there we've got a slightly different effect one with the ink and one with the paint. I'm going to pop those to one side just for the moment. We'll be coming back to those to print on top of them. While I've got the paints out, I'd like to show you how to create a background so that you can maybe do a little picture on it. Now then, I'm just going to clean up this area here for the moment. It's always important to clean up in between, otherwise you'll end up, you know, with bits of colour on your work that you didn't really intend to put on. Good to clean your fingers as well, especially when you've been using paint. So we're going to have a look at how to create a little picture like this using a simple landscape background ready for then printing on top of. I'll just show you that just now. So here I'm using blue, just a nice pale blue for the sky, and a lovely yellowy green for the hill. I'm just using an ordinary paintbrush, dip it into water, take off a bit of the excess. Let's get that piece of paper back again, because what I want you to do here is paint over the edges. So we'll start off with the sky and just, oh, that needs a bit more water. It needs to be quite a watery look. I'm going to water that down even more. The paper will bend a little bit as you start to paint, but that's okay, it'll soon straighten out again. And just keep going, don't think too much about it. Give it a nice sort of roughish look. Let a little bit of white show through for the clouds. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm using different strokes, backwards and forwards here, just to create a little bit of movement, if you like, in the sky. I'm going to leave some of that white because that looks nice. And then I'm going to just do a curve, a simple curve, and that's where the sky is going to meet the land. Okay, that will do. That's nice. Clean out your brush. Start at the bottom with the green. Again, keep it fairly watery, not too thick. Now you can keep this colour fairly solid, it doesn't have to be graded at all because you're going to print over the top of this. You're going to do more printing over the top of the green than you are the blue. So let's just meet that curve with the green paint, just like that. Now again, I've got a little bit of green going over the blue there, that's absolutely fine, because it'll get covered up with an image. Now of course, using the acrylic paint, as you probably discovered last week, it takes a little bit of time to dry before you can print on top of. So whilst that's drying, we'll have a look at another technique. So to create this effect, this lovely background effect, I've used these because I felt it gave a bit of a sort of forest feel to it. And this is where we're going to use the paint roller with the toilet roll just popped on top with some rubber bands around the edges, and that creates a fantastic we're going to look at another way to create a background for you to do a small picture on, using the paint roller that's then got a toilet roll, empty toilet roll with rubber bands placed around it, and that just slides on the end. This is a really lovely, fun way to create a background. So here, as you can see, I've created like a woodland scene with an owl, and I've even put some text in there. So we start off by inking up the rubber bands. Now you can do this however you like. Go along it all in one go and turn it around, or do one bit first. I don't know why I always like to do one bit first, then I know I've covered it all. Just keep turning and turning as you're inking. You can also do this with paint by just putting some acrylic paint out onto your palette and then rolling the roller through it as if you were actually painting, you know, using it as a proper paint roller. I prefer this way simply because it dries so quickly, and being a little bit impatient, I want to get onto the next bit of printing as quickly as I can. So here we are. I think that's just about covered. A little bit more around the corner there, and I think we are done. And it's so simple. All you're doing is rollering up and across like that. Come back down a few more places, and if you want to give the effect of maybe branches, just take it off at a slight angle, like that. There we go. Now I want to put a little bit of green on top of that as well, so I'm just going to roller off onto a piece of kitchen roll that paint there, so that when I add the next colour, it doesn't spoil the green that I want to use. I'm going to use this lovely kiwi colour that I like. It's nice and pale, but does give a nice contrast to that colour sand that I've just used. There we go again, all the way around. You're getting the idea, aren't you? Whoops, don't want orange. Make sure you've got enough ink on, otherwise you'll end up with only half a line going up, as it were, and it'll run out before you get to the edge of your paper. So there we go, let's try this. So rollering up again and across, and that's already giving quite a nice little woodland effect, as you can see. Now I have a lovely sheet of leaf stamps here that I use a lot, and I'm going to choose, just for the moment, I'm going to choose a fern-like stamp. So this one here I'm going to use, and I'm going to change the colours here with the stamps. I'm going to, you know, put a little bit of dark leaf in to start with, dark green, and I'm going to add a lighter one on top so that it gives a nice contrast. And again, you know, you don't need to be putting it over the whole paper. That's why it's good to have a sheet of paper underneath, so that when you go off, it's okay. Now remember, we can get a paler green by stamping again, so that's going to give the forest floor a little bit of depth by using it fully inked and half inked. Just be a bit random with this, don't try to be too precise. There we go, we'll leave that for that one. I'm going to take off the excess again onto the kitchen roll, so that when I use the cleansing wipe, it doesn't need to take off too much ink. Dry that again before we put the next green on. And this time I'm going to use this lovely green called Celadon. Just for a little bit of contrast. There we go. Give that a little bit of light colour there, and even a bit more up there. There we go. Now that's nice. I like that. I really like that. Now what I like to do periodically is to just, I've cut myself out what I would call like a picture mount, if you like. And it's useful, let's just take that out of the way for a minute. It's useful every now and again just to, that one's a little bit big, let's try a smaller one. Just to put it around your picture. And that gives you a bit of an idea then as to where you might want to position something else. So the next thing I want to do, if we go back to that one, is to put the owl in. So here I can see, by keeping the frame around it, I can see where to put the owl in. So let's put the owl onto the block. I'm going to use this lovely smoke blue colour to ink this up. Now this is part of a block. It was part of a whole picture and it was really only the owl that I wanted. So I ended up cutting the stamp into two. And the only little bit that I couldn't get rid of that was part of the original stamp was that tiny little line just there. So I'm just going to take the ink off that bit there. There we go. And by keeping the mount around, I can see where the owl would fit rather nicely. So let's pop the owl just there. Again, pressing left, right, top, bottom. And there we've got that, and that's lovely. I also want to bring that colour into the bottom a little bit as well. So I'm going to add another stamp from another pattern, another block if you like, just to create, now this one is, it's got like seed heads and grasses on it, and I'm going to use the same smoke blue just because I want to bring that blue down into this bit here as well to make it feel a bit more cohesive. So inking it up, you start to see what a lovely pattern it is. Now because I've chosen a pale colour here, it's not going to dominate the bottom, but it will mix in nicely with those fern leaves. So let's just pop that in place, press down, and it just adds a little bit of contrast and a little bit more depth. There we go. And because it's not quite finished at the end of there, I'm just going to add a little bit of here on here again. Turn that over and just press on the edge there so that it takes it right off the edge of the page. So you've got the beginnings here of a rather pretty little picture that you could either use as a picture or it could become a card, particularly if you add some text like I did. Mind you could add the text to the picture as well if you wanted to, couldn't you? So let's just do that. I'm going to add a different text to this one. Now I'll use the bigger block. That one's a little bit too small. Let's put that onto there. And I want it to stand out. I want the text to stand out. So let's just bring that frame back again and see where the text might be able to go. I think probably here. It could even, actually that one would look nice even underneath. So let's just ink that one up. And you'll get a chance to see what it says. So this one I'm going to do in the middle. All you need is to believe in yourself. Good reminder for all of us. Now I like to use pens just to add a little bit more detail. So I like that, that's really nice. But if you see this one in comparison, I've just added a tiny bit of detail with the pens, just to again bring it out of itself a little bit. So all I've done here is just put some dots into these seed heads like this. A few down there, quite random. A few over here. Maybe one or two down there. And I've also added a little bit to the owl itself. Now I'm just going to turn that the other way around so that I don't smudge those that I've already done. And I'm going to bring a lovely line down here. Now if you're not confident about doing this, don't worry about it. You don't have to do this. I just like to do it to add a little bit more detail, that's all. But that's me, you know, I like doing that kind of thing. I'm just going to sharpen up the feathers a bit. Give a little bit of detail down here at the end. A little bit of detail here. Pick out the eyes a little bit. And there we've got a really nice picture. Here you can see two applications for that. One could be made into a card. You just have to cut it down ever so slightly and then stick on with Pritt Stick, and that makes a really lovely card for somebody. Or you could have it as a picture and get that one framed. This is the same principle, creating a background here with the roller again. And again, that could be made into a lovely card, turned into a lovely card. Or you could decorate a journal with it, or a little art book with it. Or again, you could make that into a little picture if you wanted to. Coming back to our bubble wrap printing, we're now going to do some printing with the ink blocks on top of both of them. This was the one done with ink and this one was the one done with paint. Now, I'm not going to do on top of the paint one just for now, because what we're going to create here is actually some bookmarks. And you wouldn't, well, you could do it on top of paint for bookmarks, but you'd then have to laminate them to make sure that the paint event, you know, over time didn't start fading away onto your pages. With the ink, it doesn't matter. I've got loads of bookmarks that it doesn't happen with, because this is so quick drying and dries very steadfast. I couldn't guarantee the same with the paint, so you would have to laminate those. So let's have a look here at what we're going to do here. And again, it's about random stamping. Excuse me. I'm using this lovely set here, the one that I got from Etsy. I just love these leaves, they're such fun. I'm going to start off with that one again that's got the holes in it, and use a teal paint here. And just stamp away and away and away. May as well do it twice, that gives you two different colours. Don't forget to go off the edges, which is why you're putting your paper underneath, remember. Couple more. Let's go off that edge a little bit. There we go. Even a bit off there, look. Perfect. Stamp it out onto your kitchen roll. Give it a quick wipe if it needs it. And back onto there. Choose a different one now. Let's put you into this lovely, what's this one called? Cerulean blue. It's so bright, it's gorgeous. You can see as I'm stamping what lovely stamps these are. I don't know who the person was that I got it from Etsy actually. I don't normally shop on Etsy, so I was just researching to try and find stamps from different places, as I do from time to time when I decide I want another one. And Etsy came up with this lady that was selling them, so I just went in and got it. It wasn't terribly expensive. I think it was less than £10. And again, I've used it time and time again in different combinations, some of which you'll see next week. Swap over again, let's choose a different one. Let's have that one. I'm going to do this in a red now. There we go. Starting to feel slightly autumnal, is this? Doesn't matter if you stamp over one of the other ones as well, that's okay too. Don't be too precious about it. I keep saying this all the time, don't I? Don't get too precious. I think we'll leave that for the red. Didn't do any second stamping with that red, did I? There we go. A bit more there, a little bit more there. Clean off. As you practice with this, as you do more and more, you'll get quicker and quicker. What shall we have now? Let's have a teeny weeny one there. Teeny weeny swirls or something. There we go. We'll do this as the last colour, I think. Now that's not coming out quite so obvious on the orange, so I'm going to do less on the orange and more on the yellow with that one. Which is good to notice. And maybe I just change the colour on this one. Let's take the teal one again. Seems to stand out rather nice, and that's better. That stands out nicely on the orange one. There we go. A little bit over there. I'm even going to colour over what I'd already done. Random, random, random. Right, that's enough printing for now. Clean off again. Don't forget to clean your fingers as well from time to time, because they will get covered in ink at the ends, look. And sometimes what I notice is because the ink stays on your fingers for a little while, you end up colouring other things that you didn't mean to. Now what I'd already done on the back of here was to mark it out as to where I wanted to cut it. So let's cut that where I've marked. You can see already I can touch the ink, it's not smudging because it's already dried. Let's round off the corners a bit. Something about a rounded corner that feels nicer to touch, nicer to see as well, nicer to look at, nicer to handle, taking off that sharpness there. Let's see the difference between the two. And there you've got yourself some lovely bookmarks. Funky. So simple. You can see the difference there between that one and that one. It just feels so much better, doesn't it, having rounded corners? I'm not quite sure why. Don't need to analyse it too much, do I? And again, just at the edges. Oops. There we go. You can see that it feels entirely different. Let's go back to this little landscape picture now. The acrylic paint has dried, so we can now start printing on top of it. Now it's a good idea, once you've painted it and it's dried, is to get your frame again and decide how you want the proportion of your picture to be. Do you want it to be half sky, half land? Do you want it to be less sky and more land? Or do you want it to be more sky and less land? Personally, I quite like that combination there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut off the edge of this green here so that I know just what I'm working with. So let's cut that off. You don't have to cut it off right now, but it just helps me to visualise a bit better the proportions that I want to do, that I want to work with. Yeah, so that's better for me now. And I can see as well, if I turn that over, the painted paper is going right to the edge of the mount. So I'm going to cut off half from each side, half of the width of the mount from each side. So just getting a pencil, I'm just going to mark where half of that is on each side and cut up. And that will also help me to decide where the images are going. If I don't do this, then what might happen is I might print the bird or a butterfly, and without realising it, they've then gone out of the picture. And you don't want that to happen. So good at this stage to decide exactly what proportion and size you want the work to be. So that's great. Now I can take the mount away and know that if I leave probably about 1 centimetre on either side, top and bottom as well. Let's just turn that over and have a look. Yeah, that's about right. So 1 centimetre all the way around from your painted background here. Then I know that once I've done the printing, it will stay, hopefully it will stay in the frame, in the mount. So let's start off with these. So these are little seeds and flowers, and this one happens to have some lavender in it. I'm going to mount that onto the block, and using the pine colour I'm going to ink up the stems as best I can without it actually going into the flower itself. There we go. I'm taking the lovely amethyst colour, pop that down a minute, whoops. I can then ink up the lavender flowers themselves. There we go. Now don't forget I'm going to leave a centimetre border all the way around the edge. So that's turned out really nicely. Let's do the same again. I wouldn't advise for this one doing a second printing of it. I think it would be too pale against the deep acrylic background. So ink up as well as you can. Change the level a little bit, because again that gives depth to the piece. Let's have a third one. Things always look good in threes and odd numbers. Do you remember me telling you that? One more time. And let's pop them at a slight angle just there. Lovely. That's a good start. Now each time I'm going to bring the mount back just to make sure that I've got things where I want them to be. That's absolutely fine. What I'd like to do next is to actually do the bunting across the top. So I'm going to put a tiny little mark there where I know just underneath where I know the edge of the mount's going to be, so that I know that I mustn't go right up to the top there. Although it doesn't matter if I go out of it slightly, but that gives me a bit more of a clue. And I'm going to use these two lovely colours, the cerulean blue again. Now with this little bunting stamp, it's quite easy to be able to put more than one colour into it without then spoiling your ink pad, because you can just use the edge of it like that. So there's my little mark. So I'm going to take that from there to there, like that. That's lovely. And do the same again on the other side. Let's join that up, as it were. Now bring your mount back in at this stage and see how that's looking. Let's go up a little bit there. So what I might do is bring a bit more bunting down here and a bit more there, so that it takes it right to the edge of the little, we'll call it a painting, why wouldn't we call it a painting? Little print. A print and a paint. Mixed media, that's what it is. Mixed media. Now then, I'm going to carry that round as if it was going all the way around there. And then do the same on this side. So let's join that bit up. Off. And let's bring the mount back in again. And that's looking sweet. So what do we want to add now? I would suggest that we add some of these lovely ferns and leaves again here at the bottom. And you can go right off the page again with this, because that makes it look a wee bit more natural. So let's just bring that paper underneath. Put that to one side. I'm going back to that lovely pack that I had with all the different leaves in. So actually let's do something a bit different to the, let's do some different leaves to the ones that I've done on there. I'm going to use this forest colour here. And just by adding these, it starts to, again, give the picture more depth, so that you look as if you've got a foreground and a background. Same principle. And what we want to do is to just slightly print over the lavender. Let's move that over a bit. Over the lavender stems, I should say, so that it looks as if they're behind the foreground, you know, so they're in the midground, if you like. That's the word I'm looking for, the midground. Let's choose a different kind of leaf, and this time I'm going to use the pine colour. And you're not trying to create a Picasso here, you're having a bit of fun, remember. I keep saying this all the time, that it's a bit of fun. It's a bit of fun. I don't want you looking at it and thinking, oh, this is no good. This isn't right, this doesn't look right. Please just print, just have fun, just see what turns out. I might end up looking at this one and thinking, well, maybe it would have been better if I'd used the ferns, and who knows, we'll see. We'll just see. I think I'm going to leave that one. That's quite a large one, is that leaf one, so I think that's enough using two there. I'd like to use this little one, this is rather lovely. In fact, that's one that I've used in there as well, so let's give that a brownish colour. This is actually called Autumn Leaf. Let's see what happens when I start adding this. Take some just off the side there. here. So you've got a combination of things happening here now, like a sort of undergrowth of foliage, if you like. I think I'd like something just to fill that little bit in there, so I might just do a second one there actually. That's perfect. That's all that needed. Peel that off. And take that out of the way again. Bring your mount back and see how that's looking. Now that's starting to look really nice. So what do we want in it now? I have this little bird. It's a really old one. It's lost its backing and everything, but I rather like this little bird. So I'm going to ink that one up with this smoke blue colour, which is what we used for the owl in the other little landscape picture, the little forest picture that we did. And I'm going to keep the mount on just for the moment so that I can see where I want the bird to be. In fact, I'm going to put that almost in the middle. Now that's come out quite pale on there. There's not a lot I can do about that, because if I try to go over it, well, I'll show you what will happen if I go over it. That blue on there is obviously a lot paler than this blue on here. So let's ink that one up with a darker colour, and I can show you then what happens if I try to go over what I've already done. Now, no matter how careful I'm going to be at trying to get it exactly in the same place, it'll be a miracle if it is. So let's just see what happens here. Actually, that's pretty good, I have to say. Well, I can just see a bit of a shadow there. And this is why it's good to practice. So I actually don't want to put the butterflies into this one. I think it looks fine as it is without the butterflies this time round. So I'm going to leave that there. Again, what I do like to do to just keep bringing a little bit more depth into the picture is to add, I'm going to add a tiny bit of detail with pens. I have some Staedtler pens, and these are Staedtler pens, fine liners, and I also have Stabilo pens as well. And I'm just going to pick out with one or two dots just a bit more detail in the lavender. And that's all I'm doing, just adding little dots here and there, just to make them stand out a little bit more in the mid-ground, if you remember. A little bit onto each flower, just gives it a little bit more definition. There we go. And I'm going to also just draw around the eye of the bird so that that looks a little bit clearer as well. And there we have another little picture. That's it for this week, folks. Next week we're going to be looking at how to use grids to create symmetrical patterns. These can then be used again for cards or for printing onto fabric, which you may then want to turn into cushions or placemats, you name it. And we're also going to look at how to use masks to create this lovely flowing feel that works really, really well on cards and would also work well with fabric on cushions as well. So I hope you're feeling inspired, and what we've done today has given you a few ideas. Have fun this week, and I look forward to showing you all again next week. Take care, bye bye.